Hey everybody, Brittany here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be covering round 9, the final round of the Quebec Open. And I had a pretty bad tournament for the second half, and I was just like hoping just to get this game over with as soon as possible. And that's exactly what did not happen, which is funny when you see the first few moves. So I remember before the game even started, I went with some people and I was talking to them like, I'm going to find a way to lose this one. I ended up playing this opponent before. I played them in a Najdorf just about a month ago. And yeah, I was expecting the Najdorf in this game, so I did a little bit of prep in it. Turns out that's not what happened. I played e4. My opponent played e5. This was already kind of a shock, but that's okay. I like playing against e5, so I was happy. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. They play the Berlin, and I castle. So I offer the endgame, and I'm just thinking like, okay, if we get into an endgame, I'm just gonna play like the driest way possible. I'll push, but like I'm happy. Just a boring position, like hard, hopefully hard to mess up. But from how I was playing this tournament, I'll probably still mess it up. They take on e4. I play d4, offering the endgame, and then they blunder here. They actually don't go for it. They play knight takes d4, which just wins a piece immediately for me. Because you take on d4. And now, if they take, I play rook e1, and this piece just drops, actually. One thing that's important to mention is if they play knight d6 here, and both pieces are attacked, if I move my knight, the bishop hangs, and that's a problem. I just have queen e2, which pins the pawn, defends my bishop, and if they take, I can take with the knight. And if they block somehow, like bishop e7, then I actually could take on e5, but I could also play something like knight b3. Everything's fine, everything's safe, I'm winning. They play bishop c5, and I should probably play something like knight f3 here. That looks pretty good to me. I don't do that. I play knight b3, which is fine. But then they can go into this position, which is still winning, by the way. And yeah, queen f3, bit of a spoiler. Queen f3 is going to be best here because it traps the knight. We're just going to take with the queen instead. And after castles, queen takes f2. We're just up a lot of material. This is winning. Instead, I took with the king without thinking because it was like, okay, I'll just take with the king. And by this point, I was playing a little bit faster because it was like, okay, I'm just up a piece. Queen f6 check. I'm thinking like, oh, great. I can't play king g1 because queen b6. I can't play queen f3 because of queen b6. So I have to play like king e1 or king g3. What have I done? Why did I take with the king? But at the same time, you know, queen f3 is easy to miss. Especially when you're just like thinking fast and trying to get the game over with because it's been a horrible tournament. I go with king e1, which is definitely worse than king g3. Now, at least there's no queen b6 picking up this bishop. I have to preserve my material. Queen h4 check was played. I played g3. King f1 is actually better. And if they take, then we just continue with our development, like queen f3 or even bishop e3. Looks good. If queen h1, we can just play bishop g1, queen f3, knight c3, like all of our pieces get out. We should be good. They have a lot of pawns, which is a little scary, but not enough. I play g3 instead. Now they can take on h2 and play h5. And although they're losing, this is so messy. And already I'm just kicking myself. I'm like, what have I just done? This is extremely messy. This is not the type of game I want for my last game here because I just want to leave and drive home. Because I had a long drive ahead of me too. But no, my opponent wants to play on a lot and made things so complicated for me. Okay, knight c3. My idea was I'm just going to give up the pawn. If they take it, then I'm actually really happy about that. So I wasn't really worried if they tried to go for it. Even here, if they go for the pawn, I'm also really happy, like knight c3. And their queen's actually a little awkward. And I just, like... I improve my development because if I try to be too materialistic here, that's not great. And I started looking a little bit more at the material count here. And I started counting. So queen for queen, okay. Rook for rook in the corner, okay. A bishop for bishop, sure. And then I have 3 minor pieces for a rook, okay. And then I started counting the pawns. So right now, when you count just the pieces, it's like, okay, I have 3 pieces, right? That's 9 versus 5. And then pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for my opponent. They have all their pawns, and I have 4. So they're up 4 pawns. So in this position, because of that, it's actually equal material, funnily enough. And I just won a piece, but now it's equal material somehow, because they got a lot of pawns. Now I have to, like, find a way to, like, re-win the game, or even hold it, because they have so many pawns. Like, even if I get to an endgame of some sort, it feels like I might lose, because they just have so many pawns. That was not inspiring. They played h5, with the idea of, like, h4. My king's completely exposed. I play knight c3. They play h4. I end up taking it. I was also considering something like g4, but I was really scared of queen g3 check. And I didn't know how to deal with this. Turns out king f1, it's actually not that bad. Something like bishop e2, d5, and king g2. Looks pretty interesting. I have to worry about d4 though. And this is kind of what I mean, is like it's so easy to mess things up. Rook h2 check comes, and I have to play king f1 to not be worse. So all of a sudden, like again, it's really hard to just maintain a supposed edge according to the engine, but not even just that, but now I have to defend. So okay, take on h4 is what I did. Now it's equal, by the way. Queen takes h4. I was really scared of queen f2. This is actually fine. I should consider it. But instead I play king d1, and now I'm worse. And this, what I mean is, all of a sudden, I just didn't think I was wanting to get the tournament over with, and because of that, I'm getting punished for it. c6, bishop e2, and now d5. And now I'm really upset. Again, started counting the material again and realized that it's equal material. And honestly, after this game, like, even during this game, I was thinking, like, if I lose this, I'm, like, so close to just quitting chess. Like, I win a piece right out of the opening, and somehow I lose the game. Like, there was no compensation, and somehow I just let them get it. And now I'm worse. Great. I go bishop d2, f5, bishop to e1, queen f6. Bishop f2 looked interesting, bishop d2 back or something. I wanted to get my rook out, but I just can't. I can't get it out. If I could play like king d2, rook d1, king c1, king b1 all at once, then maybe. But even still, look at their pawns. Their pawns are so annoying. It feels like I'm eventually going to have to sacrifice for some of them. I went queen g2 here, expecting e4. They played e4, which actually is something I should have been happy about. Because e4 is not a good move now. Funnily enough, I have bishop d2. And if they try f4, I can now take on e4. And we can enter a position like this, where this feels a little bit better, but at the same time, finding this is not the easiest thing to do. So, okay, e4. They play, or I play queen f2 as a response. I miss it. Obviously, I miss it. They play f4 now. I play a4. Considering, like, maybe I move my rook out or something. I was hoping for e3 here. And, yeah, if they play f3, it's, again, just going to lose eventually. But they played e3, and I was a little happy. It felt like this was something. This is like, you have to do copium strategies, which is where you cope with your position. You're like, oh, okay, I'm losing, but if I could just, like, get the light squares. then maybe I can cause a little bit of problems. It's worse, but e3 does actually give me a little something. I should play queen g1, because if they play f3, I can take on e3. I played queen g2 instead. Didn't really see that. I was just trying to prevent f3. But this is not the right strategy, because they have bishop h3, which is really annoying. Queen g1. And now they can castle long. They actually didn't castle long for some reason, which is strange. They played king d8. And I was happy to see this. So, there's a few moves here. There's bishop f3 and there's king c1. Of course, I didn't find any of them. I played a really strange move instead. Queen h1. It's putting my queen in a pin, but my idea was to just cover the f3 square, and this is the only way I could cover it again. Which kind of makes sense from that standpoint, but of course they go king c7, which is the best move. And now it's like, okay, I know things are bad, but let me just like reroute some pieces and try for some tricks. I play knight c5. And yeah, if they play like rook a8, g5, g4 is coming and I'm losing. They didn't do that. They actually play queen d4 check. And now I'm back in the game. And it actually felt like it here. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to play knight d3. I'm going to play bishop f3. And I'm going to play knight e2. And I'm going to blockade on the light squares. And it feels like that's actually happening now. So I start with knight d3, of course. Rook a f8. I was thinking of bishop f3 here. I played queen g1 instead, which isn't much worse. It is undoubtedly a little bit worse, but it's actually fine. Then they go a5. And now I'm a happy boy, because I'm out of any discoveries. Bishop f3 is playable, and their queen is a little awkward. So I start with bishop f3, and I have to be careful here. e2 check does not win my queen. I can take on e2, and I'm just in time. This is actually winning now, because everything has been successfully blockaded. Nothing to worry about, which is really surprising. The only thing to consider here is there any g5 stuff? But there's not. We can take on a5 first, or we can just take on h3. I think this taking on h3 is probably the easier of the solutions. And then we have this move bishop g4. And all of a sudden, they can't actually make progress with these two pawns. And I'm getting a full light square blockade. Like, there's nothing they can do about it. Rook h1. I like the move knight f2. I think this is very simple. I'm just going to go, like, maybe king e2, king f3, or, like, rook c1, king d2 or something. It feels like I'm going to get out. The pawns are fully blockaded. It feels like they're probably going to drop. And I have 3 pieces for a rook. This is good. So instead, bishop f5 was played. And then I play knight e2. And there's a problem. f4 is hanging. Queen g5 could be in the air. But I also have a bigger threat here. They end up playing queen f6. But by the way, white is now winning. Because of a5 from them. a5 was just horribly timed. And now I have just enough time to create this blockade and play bishop c3. And here my opponent resigned. And I was like, okay, I'm still maybe okay at chess. Like, maybe I don't have to quit just yet. Because now they have to move. We can take on g7 with check in these positions, which is really nice. And when we take with check, we're also just threatening to win an exchange. So, like, let's just say queen e7. Queen takes g7 check. Feels like a good move. And the idea here, again, is that we're going to be taking one of these. So funnily enough, they actually have this move. Bishop takes d3, c takes d3, and then rook h3. Even still, there's like bishop g4, rook h4, and now bishop takes f8. But, of course, even with all those complications, bishop takes e3, we still come out ahead. Here, this is like a still worst case scenario. So we weren't like fully out of the woods if I took on e7. Of course, queen e7, queen takes g7 is probably a bit cooperative. Taking on f4 feels like one of the better bets here. So does bishop e5 check, by the way. Bishop e5 check and taking on f4 like that also looks really good. There's a lot of moves that should win. So yeah, again, after bishop c3, my opponent resigned. I was like so happy about that because all of a sudden I got back in the game. I did not deserve to win this one at all. I deserved to lose. This was like, I think this is one of the worst games I've ever played, straight up. And that's including my first one where it was like several piece hangs, like nonstop. Because at least I had the excuse then of like being a beginner. Here I'm not a beginner anymore, but I played like one. I played worse than one. Because at least beginners know to keep material, and somehow I just like gave a lot of it back with like by giving up a lot of pawns. But that's gonna cover it for the Quebec Open. I hope this game entertained you, because it's very entertaining and very disgusting. But that's gonna cover it. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in my next event. Have a good one. Bye bye.